Druidry, Kora Saguran.
Falchigo Korayan and Saholia.
Hello and welcome to Conversations in the Grove, a show about Druidry in ancient and modern times. Thank you for joining us today. This is the third episode from our second season. We're very glad to have you along. In our first season, we discussed the relationship between Druidry and animism, and we have made the first 2 full episodes of season 1 available for free on our Dune Moor Druid Orders group Facebook page, and also you can find them on our Dune Moor Druid Order YouTube channel. As part of our commitment to serve our community, we also make the first 15 minutes of all of our episodes available for free on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, and we ask you to please remember to like and subscribe. If you'd like to support our efforts, you can do so by becoming one of our valued Patreon members by going to patreon.com/conversationsinthegrove. Our Patreon supporters have access to all of the full hour-long episodes in addition to other perks. As we do at the beginning of every show, we'd like to take a moment to appreciate and honor and to give gratitude to the Native American ancestors of the Pikes Peak region, among them the Ute, Comanche, Kiowa, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Apache, and the Lakota Sioux. Usually at this point in our show, we take a moment out and I ask either Ben or Brendan to do an opening prayer for us. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. The 3 of us had the opportunity to get outside and go for a hike recently, and we took a moment just to record the sounds of nature. So instead of our opening prayer today, we're going to take a few minutes to enjoy the video and the sounds of nature. The topic of today's show is nature. So as you've probably noticed, many people today, sometimes that includes ourselves, are separated from the natural world around us. The wilderness or nature is, in a sense, outside of human control in the way that it lacks the order that we see in our day-to-day world. Yet the forest seems to be a place of magic and adventure for many of us. Even if we're physically separated from the forest, if we are attentive, we can at times sense the natural world in a way of an approaching storm, a cool breeze, a hot summer day, or the sounds of birds chirping. So my question to both of you as we get started on this topic today, how do we build or enhance our practice in such a way that helps us to strengthen our relationship to the natural world? And secondly, why do you both feel that's important to our Druidry practice?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's core, I think. I mean, you know, it's really, we have a certain connection to the landscape as Druids or Druid-oriented folk, pagan-oriented folk, or spirituality folk that really can't really exist without it. I mean, it's a real clear, it's clear recognition that we are the land is us, and without that conscious relationship between us and the land, seeing it as something other than just, a resource or a means to our own desires, then we really lose sight of things in pretty catastrophic ways, and we're really witnessing a lot of that right now, because when you don't have that connection and you see the land as just a resource, then it's just something to use. It doesn't, it's despirited, it's desacralized, and it's made into just a tool. It's just a tool, and however you leave it after you use it isn't your concern. And I think a lot of people see it that way, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. I really like what you said, Ben, about we are the land and the land is us, you know, and understanding that deeply, I think, is really key. And though I think in pretty much all spiritual traditions, we acknowledge that there's an aspect of us that is transcendent of this fleshly incarnate form. But this fleshly incarnate form is hugely integral, I would even say central to our process of realization. That's why we're in this form. That's why we're born here, you know, is to undergo, in my view at least, to undergo the pursuit and attainment of wisdom and illumination in a very rarefied environment. And I'm speaking sort of cosmically. I think this is a rarefied kind of birth. And so to be here in this incarnate form with all of the let's say the ontological facticities that accompany that I think is a huge doorway, a huge opportunity into depth and into the attainment of those goals of wisdom, illumination, transformation. And so our very incarnate nature is needful in that process, sort of like using the alchemical metaphor, the prima materia, right? The core material that's being transmuted in the alchemical working is needful. You can't have the process without that prima materia, you know, and so the circumstances of our incarnate
and
beingness are I think constitute that prime matter that we need to not just accept, but as you said, Ben, to develop a very clear, deep relationship with and see ourselves to some degree in unification with. Otherwise, it's sort of a waste. This birth is a wasted opportunity.
yeah, and especially I think connecting with it locally is where you start, you know, because and I you know, two of the things that helped me with kind of contextualize, I guess, my relationship with the land is the concepts of Brie and Bua. And this is seems to be sort of a thing that's been around the Celtic Reconstructionist community for a while. But Brie is that life force that's in the land, you know, the vigor that the land inherently has, that thing that is that seems to be to gather in some places. I mean, it's everywhere. I think is the concept of it. It's everywhere, but it concentrates in some areas more than others, and you know, can, you know, ley lines and, you know, sacred sites, and but also just places of real intense beauty and where you just naturally feel a sense of awe. And then Bua is what we put on the land, what we add to it, or take away from, or how we take away from it. Alternatively, it is, you know, there's the existing matrix of the land that has its own history and its own consciousness and its own proper harmonic operation, or light, or I don't know, or pattern making. And then we come as a culture, whether it's a European culture or a First Nations culture, or you know, Hispanic culture, you know, which is pretty prominent here in Colorado on the Southwest. And we create a unique relationship with that pre-existing being that is here, and we have to harmonize with that being in some way in order to survive. And so those are kind of the ways that I tend to approach that on a local level, because I used to have this professor in college, and he said that all history starts with local history. And it's built in that way. At first it's just a local thing that happens in your town or your state or your village or your mountain range, whatever it happens to be. And then all of those local stories end up creating a larger vision of where we head as a culture. And so the local connection to the land is just it's a really good and proper and fascinating way to connect with the many levels of that being, and looking at the brie of places and hopefully, and the bua that you bring to it, and hopefully mixing those in a good way.
So in keeping with the conversation about our experiences in nature, I'm wondering if the two of you would share your insights on how our meditation practice might be enhanced by spending time in nature.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I do that really draws in some traditional themes is meditating near water, running water, and just, focusing on the sound of running water, and, allowing that sound to just fill my mind and my spirit as much as possible, and to let everything else go. And I've found that it's, it's like listening to a mantra. It has when you really listen, it makes so many different types of sound all at once that you can literally roam your consciousness through the different aspects of the sound and hear so many different things that it can be absolutely trance-inducing and mesmerizing. Oops. Like you'll hear the deeper parts of the sound, like where the water is. I meditate near a small waterfall. It's not very big. It's only maybe about a couple feet high, but it goes into a nice deep pool, and you can tune your consciousness into the deep gurgling sound of the water, where it's really going underneath, and it's almost making this sort of drum-like heartbeat. You can tune all the way up to the cracks and pops that it makes when the top of the water is smacking against a stone, a drop is smacking against a stone or splashing up against the top of the pool. And then there's the rush, that constant, just the rushing noise of it and the different tones that just the rush has. And the reason why I say that's traditionally inspired is just that the idea of it's at the water's edge that poetry is revealed to poets, or that destiny is revealed to the destined. And I've had, it's amazing how I've had so many amazing insights after spending time near water. And I'm not thinking while I'm doing it. I'm not trying to come up with an insight. I'm not trying to fill my mind with something other than the sound of water and the feeling of the place. And it's a good way to kind of empty out the cauldron of your mind and let things, and then it's like, and if you can get into the water, that's even better. If you can combine it with a physical purification as well as a spiritual or mental one, then you're opening up the vessel of your spirit to to take in something new. And, you know, my mind will I'll feel relaxed, I'll feel energized, and I'll feel open. And then things will just come, or I'll have an insight. And it may not be like right after, it may be 20 minutes later, it could be 2 hours later. But it has an effect that you just can't really get anywhere else. You know, it's like, or like listening to the wind in the trees. You just, you know, you just focus solely on that sound. But like if a windstorm comes through and you get the chance to be outside and you get to be among trees, and all the different sounds and levels of sounds that you can roam your consciousness through, to the clicking of leaves, to the creak of branches, and, you know, the occasional falling limb, and the way it's moving through the dead leaves on the ground or the grass. You know, it has a way of, I don't know, I just, you know, I'm sure many Druids have experienced it, you know, where you just, when you're out there and you just listen.
Yeah, I would add that flowing water also has the potential to provide a visual meditation object as well. And the visual component in combination with the sonic component can really alter your state of consciousness.